What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel for a special one today because as far as I'm aware, this is going to be the most intensive, hopefully conclusive test that has ever been done on GSPro about all the different penalties, how the ball reacts, all the different power percentages, and even some spin percentages out of all the different lies on GSPro. I will preface this at the very beginning. I want to manage expectations. This is going to be a long video. If you're expecting to click on the title and see this video and expect like a 5 or 10 minute watered down condensed version of all the different penalties, this is not the video. I will, at the very beginning here, before we even get into it, I'm going to go through. I have them all written down of what I play it to. So I will go through those right now. But this is going to be a long video of me hitting tons of shots out of different lies, and we're going to see if we can kind of draw some conclusions about different penalties, what you need to add or subtract, mostly add for the different penalties out of the rough, deep rough, lie, the sand, if there's a difference between the greenside bunkers and fairway bunkers. And I think the whole reason why I want to do this is because as of late, I've been noticing I guess before we even get into it, the whole reason I started to question things was because of the greenside bunkers here. But before we even get into it, for anyone that maybe is new to GSPro, maybe they don't have a great rule of thumb of all the different penalties and percentages, I'm going to go through those right now and get that out of the way. So at least you'll see that. If you don't want to watch the rest of this with all the tests, so be it. But I'm going to hit a ton of shots, and we're going to kind of test things on the fly and see if we can draw any conclusions. But as far as penalties, for what we have set up right now, I want to neutralize and try to control as many variables as I can. So I have the wind turned off, and I have my global elevation. We're at premonition. Shout out to Flying Fat Kid. So no course elevation or anything. But in terms of, if you guys want a general rule of thumb in terms of percentages and what you need to play these different shots at, to start, the elevation for the course, it's going to be 2% per 1,000 feet. So if you're at 1,000 feet, based on whatever you're used to, whatever you're locally at, if you're 1,000 feet above, you need to take off 2% on every single shot. If you're at close to sea level like I am, or if you're at Colorado and you're going down, you're going to need to add 2% per 1,000 feet, up or down. As far as the wind plays 1% per 1 mile per hour of hurting wind. So if you have a 10 mile an hour wind into your face, you need to add 10% onto the shot to get it there. And vice versa, if you have a helping wind or wind to your back, you need to take off or subtract 0.5% per mile an hour. And fun fact, both of those within GSPro actually work the same as real life on course. So it's tough to judge wind. At least I have a tough time judging wind on course, but it works the same way. If you have a 10 mile an hour wind into your face on a 250-yard drive, it's going to take off 10% or 25 yards. And the 0.5% for helping wind works the same. Same thing with the elevation. If you're used to playing at sea level and you're at 5,000 feet of elevation or altitude, you need to add the 2% per 1,000 feet. So it's going to be an extra. You're going to play pretty much everything's going to go 10% further than what you would usually play. As far as different lies and penalties, all years, this is what there's not real any definitive guides from what I've seen online. Some people have done some videos and some people have mentioned some stuff on Reddit and whatnot, but this is what I've been playing it to over the past like 2 or so years I've had GSPro. Feel free to correct me if you guys find anything different, but semi-rough is going to take off 1%. Concrete is going to take off 1%. The regular rough is going to take off 6%. Pine straw is going to take off 6%. These are all the power percentages. I move my videos around so you can see. I've just been noticing over the past couple years of what I've been using GSPro. I take a look after I hit the shot, and I find a general rule of thumb of what everything plays to. So the speed, I'll get into that in a second, but that's where I'm getting these percentages from. So rough 6%, basically it's going to come out as 94%. Same thing with pine straw, 6%. Fairway bunkers, I play 10%. Deep rough, I play 21%, basically 20%. And greenside bunkers, I play 25%. I just hit a shot here. You can see it shows 74%, so that was 26%. However, the whole reason why I'm doing this video and why I've been questioning things as of late is because I'm seeing that some of these numbers don't add up. So although it shows right around 25% on speed for greenside bunkers, over the past week or so, I've been playing them closer to 50%. So that's, if anyone, the beginning part, you want some general rule of thumbs, there you go. We're going to start getting into it because the whole reason why I started to question things and I want to do this is because if you notice, I have the Open API or the API Connect, whatever it's called. I'm curious to see if any of those are displayed differently as the raw numbers versus what we see in the game on the tiles. It doesn't look like it is, so I may take that off. But just to start here, we can compare and contrast. But like I said, I just hit a greenside bunker shot. It shows 74% power, or speed. I always equate that over, and I think most people equate it over to raw carry. So what I would do here usually is add 25% on 23 yards. So 10% would be 2.3, so basically a yard. But if you see what I've been noticing as of late, the game carry versus the raw carry, that's right, that's like 50%. So as of late, over the past week, I've been adding the 50% to it, and it seems pretty close. So instead of 25%, I'll add 50. So I'll take 10 yards, or not 10 yards. I'll add an extra 23. So 50% will be like 12. I would add 12 yards and then take off, depending on soft greens, hard greens, firm greens, maybe 5-10 yards from there. But basically the raw carry. So this made me start to question, why are these numbers not adding up? And I think, which kind of comes as a surprise to me, I think this may be the speed percentage. Instead of the raw carry, I think it may be reducing ball speed, which is a lot tougher to judge. So I think through some of this, we're going to start to see, I may come up with a different general rule of thumb of what the power percentages I need to add or subtract to these shots based on raw carry to game carry. Because 8.7, that's going to be 16 and then 1.4. So it's even a slightly below 49 point something percent, 8.7 to 17.5. That's 50%, not 70, not 74 or 26%, if you guys are catching my drift. So first thing we're going to do, I just hit a shot here. I'll hit one more just to show you. This is not going to come out as 26% or 25%, what I usually play greenside bunkers to. So basically, before we really start hitting a ton of shots, what I'm going to do is at least show you guys that these, based on the raw versus game, for the greenside bunkers are closer to 50%. Then we're going to go, I actually asked Judd, Run Pud Run, who was kind enough. I kind of asked him a couple different questions. I'm just an average user like you guys, so it's kind of cool to ask him, having more inside information of how everything works. If there's different percentages, if the designers can set different percentages and penalties based on the course, which he said is not. So basically, all of the percentages is just based on the lie that you're in, either rough, semi-rough, sand, concrete, deep rough, all that stuff. That's all stock from GSPro, so they can't change any of it. So all the numbers and all the penalties are stock from GSPro. So that's one kind of misnomer or question mark that we got out of the way. And he was actually saying he didn't think that there was a difference from fairway bunkers to greenside bunkers. So we're going to start hitting shots here. I'm going to go to a fairway bunker. We're on course practice. We're going to see what the power percentage shows and then what the difference is. And then Bogeyman Bill actually gave me a really good idea of the different power percentages or speed percentages. I'm going to keep mixing up speed and power, but same thing for the deep rough with different upslopes or downslopes and different lofts. So it's just, I have a very analytical brain. So if you guys ever watch me play, I kind of go through all the numbers between the elevation, the wind, the lie, what I need to add. And I like to get my mind settled on a number to the pin and what I'm trying to hit. The dynamic penalty with the loft, and we're on a 15-degree upslope, all that stuff is going to vary. So for example, a lot of you guys know if you're in the deep rough, you try to hit a 3-wood out of it, it's going to take a lot more off of it versus you hit an 8-iron, which rightfully so, that's the same on course. But Bogeyman Bill gave me a really good idea to hit basically every club in my bag out of the deep rough and see the different percentages of what we're losing out of there. But like I mentioned with the speed and the power, I think it may be ball speed, which they're matching right now from what is cutting from the square into the Open API Connect, whatever you want to call it, into the data tile. So we're just going to see. Like I said, I'm going to hit a ton of different shots. Maybe we can draw some conclusions by the end of it and maybe come up with some new general rule of thumbs, which to me, playing a scramble or playing anything SGT, anything on course, I relay everything over to raw carry of where I'm trying to land it and how far I'm trying to hit it. If it's actually, these speed percentages are based on ball speed, that's a lot tougher to judge. I know general rule of thumb is like 2, 3, 4 yards per mile an hour, somewhere in there, like 2 to 3 yards per mile an hour, but that all depends on loft, everything else, VLA. It's going to be tough to try to draw any definitive conclusions, but we'll hit another greenside bunker shot, which should come out similar. So I think we can see everything on screen. I moved my video over. That one came out 79%. I gave it a little bit extra. So right around, like I said, that general rule of thumb is what I see, around 25%. That one was a little more powerful. So it didn't quite take off as much. But if you divide the 19 by 32, that's still not going to be 20%. That would have been closer to like 4 raw. So 10% would be 3.2, 20% would be 6. So that's still a little bit short. But basically, as you saw in those other shots, that was 79. The last one was 76. I find greenside bunkers from based on what that speed percentage shows. That one I hit a little bit easier, so it should take a bit more off. That should be right around 75, 76%. So greenside bunkers, like I said, 25%. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hit out of a fairway bunker and get that out of the way to see if there is in fact a difference between greenside and fairway. So that, I think we could all agree, that was right next to the green. This would be considered a fairway bunker right here. We can even actually go back a little bit more. Where is the first bunker? That was the closest one. Either way, that's definitely not near the green. So Judd was thinking that if that is the case, the 10% versus 25%, then it's going to have to be within a distance from the green itself, which he thought would be tough to implement. But based on that last shot, we had ball speed of 34.4, which matches exactly to the 34.4 on the data tile. As far as I can tell, all those numbers match up. So again, whatever they're taking the percentage off of, to me, the biggest variance is between the game carry and the raw carry, which is what I judge things on. But here, 141, I would play this as 10%, so I'd add another 14 yards up to about 155. I'm going to hit an 8-iron, and we'll see what we get out of this fairway bunker for the speed percentage. I thinned it. It's going to be short. So 127 in the game, 141, and that came out 7%. So we had 100% spin and 7% on the speed. Like I said, depending on how you hit it and how far you are, if we were way further back, if we go to a different hole, it's going to be closer to 10%. But as far as I can tell, there's a difference. You could say that's the dynamic penalty based on the upslope and the speed and all that stuff. But I don't think there's much of a question mark between 7% and then closer to 20-25% around the fairway, or around the green rather. If I hit one more, and I was thinking, I played SGT, I did the Pro Tour, and I kind of cooled down, so these aren't about shot quality, but it came out 8.3 right anyways, that's why I missed it so far right. But that one again, 7%. These aren't going to be about shot quality, it's more so about data, and I think I may find a place on the video, maybe right above mine, in between the video and the open API here, in this open gap. I may divide these shots in the editing and basically divide the 129 divided by 144. If I pull out my calculator, I do not believe that adds up to 7%, which again is a question mark to where is the speed, where is that coming from? Like the ball speed 104.6, that matches 104.6, like the raw speed coming from my launch monitor, which is the square. So you would think if it was based on ball speed, there would be a variance there and they would take some off. I have noticed a little bit with the spin numbers are a little bit off. 57.15 in the open API, and we got 56.92 in the data tiles. I don't know why that would be the case. You would think the numbers would match across the board like everything else between ball speed, VLA, HLA. 1.6 on the HLA, that matches. VLA 22.5, that matches. Spin axis matches. Why that's a little bit different, I'm not really sure. But if I go into my calculator, and you guys can do some of this on the fly, I'm just going to hit a ton of shots, and maybe you notice something, put it in the comments. Maybe I notice something by the end of it. But if I take 129.4 divided by 144.6, that comes out to 89%, not 93%. 89.48 8, 2, 4, 3. So again, I don't really know, which is why I'm doing this. I don't know where that speed percentage is coming from. And if you're trying to hit, I'm not good enough to hit within a yard or two anyways, but if you're trying to do the math and try to get as close as you can to the actual number, like these numbers somewhere need to add up, and we need to know where they're coming from, which as of right now we don't. So I think pretty definitive we can figure that the fairway bunkers do penalize you, the fairway bunkers penalize you less than greenside bunkers. Now if we go maybe a little bit of a longer hole, I want to start hitting some, we'll go rough. I guess we'll go rough first. Do we have a par 5? Third hole is a par 5. We'll go into the rough. That should be, oh, how do I get out of this? Okay. I meant to drop the ball, not the... All right, here we're in the rough. So I'm going to hit some shots, and we'll see. They should be all right around 6%. We'll start with a wedge. You wouldn't necessarily hit a wedge out of here from this far, but we'll see if the rough changes on any of the penalty percentages and see if we can draw any conclusions of where it's even coming from. So the rough should play about 6%. This is a 60 degree. So we had 66 raw and 63 in the game, 6% on the speed. That should be pretty close. To me, that adds up. That should be pretty close without crunching the numbers on every single one. So 60 degree, that came out 6%. That seems pretty close. If we go 56, again, don't worry about where these are going. It's just experimenting on the different lies. We're on a little bit of a downslope too, which again affects everything. It's just tough with all these different factors. That one also 6%, 56 in the game, 57 raw. That seems pretty close. From what I can tell, I mean, I won't hit every single club, but I'll go 8 iron, like 4 iron, and then 3 wood. They should all be right around 6%. And maybe if you guys are crunching some of these numbers in the comments or as you're watching this, if you divide again the 56.9 divided by 57.7, it should be relatively close. To me, that adds up. But again, I don't know if that's even how the speed percentage is even calculated. I don't know. Again, to me, the ball speeds, which is kind of pointless to even have the open API up there, but I'll leave it. Like, if it's based on the speed percentage is based on the ball speed, there should be a variance, but they both match, 56.7 and 56.7. So you would think if that's where they're taking it from, they would be slightly lower on one, and you could tell. I don't have an LCD screen like a GC3 on here, but to me, the open API, those are the raw numbers coming right from the square. So I have to believe that's what, if I had an LCD output, like on top of the square, that's what it would be showing. Runaway ball. All right, we hit it into the water, but again, 6% out of the rough. So 146, I actually went further because it was downhill, but 6% in terms of the speed, 94%. The rough is going to be all the same, so that was an 8 iron. I'll hit a 4 iron, and then I'll hit a 3 wood, but again, just kind of showing you guys on the fly here. Everything is going to play. We're at 8.4 degree downslope, so obviously I would aim left, but for me, from what I've seen, what I went over at the beginning, all these rough percentages, what I add to the numbers, I do the math and say, all right, what's 6% on 422? 10% would be 42, and then I would take off, so about 20, 25 I would add to it if I was happen to top it off the tee right here. This is a 4 iron. That sounded weird. But 197 raw, 200 in the game. Again, it was down. We're hitting it down into the water. That's not a great shot. But again, 81% spin, 94% speed. And just to kind of put a bow on the rough percentages, if I hit a 3 wood, it should be the same thing. Right around 6% is what I see out of the rough. The deep rough is going to be a cool test here. We'll get into that in a second. But 3 wood. Not particularly hit well on any of these, but 150, 193 raw, 156. That came out 7%. So a little bit of that dynamic to where less loft, the lower VLA, it's going to penalize you a little bbit more. But general rule of thumb is what I play it to, as 6% is what it shows. But again, I know that one landed in a weird spot. We're on a 8.4 degree right slope and 3.3 down slope. If you add up those numbers, obviously 193 compared to 156, that's substantially more than 7%. So again, I ask, where is that 7%? Where is that coming from? And we had 132.8 ball speed and matches up exactly with the Open API at 132.8. So don't know. I would like to know, I don't know if we'll ever know, but I would like to know where that's coming from so you can select better yardages ideally. But if we drop the ball over here into the deep rough, you can't really see anything, so that's probably not the best spot. What about over here? Still not the best spot. All right, that's a little bit better. Can we find a little bit of a flatter lie? Four degrees right. I mean, we're on a hill, obviously, so. All right, 3.8. That's probably about as good as it's going to get. I just wanted to be able to move. Want to be far enough away to be able to hit 3-wood. Should have just left it before. All right, we'll go with that. So we're in the deep rough. Here will be a cool experiment to see what exactly this is going to come out as in terms of the speed. And again, maybe if we start dividing some of these numbers, I have a feeling it'll be different than what it's going to show, right around 20-21%. But we'll start with a 60. This should be the least penalizing because you're taking more loft, similar to what you would on course, which it is realistic in that sense. But trying to wrap your head around where the numbers are coming from is kind of tough. But 60 degree out of here, there's going to be a ton of VLA. It's going to launch higher. It's going to not penalize you quite as much out of this deep rough. Obviously, deep rough into the deep rough. That took off 19%, so it says 81. If we go 56, this should be about the same, but that went from 55 raw down to 39 game. 10% would be 5, 10, so that's still even, that's again just does not add up. 55.6 ball speed, 55.6, all those numbers match up. So again, that should have been, if it was 19%, even 20, that should have been like 11 yards, which would have put us at 44-ish instead of 39. And you can't really base it. Maybe the total length is a little bit closer, but that depends on where you land it. So you could hit it off a rock or a tree and it'll bounce crazy. You can't really do it on that. So I think, to me, the most sense would be dividing the raw versus the game, which is the most constant. This is a 56 out of the deep rough. Let's see what we got penalized here. 81% again. We'll go pitch and wedge, and we're going to see a pretty big drop off here in the variance when I start. So that was a 20-yard difference between raw and game. We're going to see a pretty big drop off when I start hitting the lower VLA, lower lofted clubs. Still pitch and wedge from there. It's a pretty conservative shot. Once again, 81%, so that came out 19. Try an 8-iron. .116 raw versus 86. 10% would be 11.6, so 22. Still doesn't quite add up. That was an 8 iron. We'll go 6-4, and then either hybrid or... So that one came out 80, so we lost 1 extra percent because of we're working our way down in VLA and loft. But again, we lost 50 yards. We lost 45 yards on that. 150 compared to 104. How does that add up to 20%? And I keep checking it, but 107 ball speed, it's going to be the exact same here, 107 on the Open API. I think really the only way for me, the best way, like I keep saying, is just raw versus game. And it's going to be dynamic, so it's tough to get a general rule of thumb. But I think the best way is just going to be dividing these numbers after the fact and getting an average of what it comes out as. What am I hitting here? This is a 6. So even lower loft here. Oh, that was a horrendous shot. I scolded it on top of it. That one came out 79, so that's where I got the 21% earlier. I see it right around 20% out of the deep rough. 77 in the game versus 145, so that was half. $171 raw, 125 in the game. That came out also 79. If we go down to a 4 iron, I'd imagine we'll probably lose maybe an extra percent. I'm just curious, like that one didn't seem as big of a variance, but if I divide 125.5 divided by 171.3, that's 73%. So it's kind of close. The other one was like half, but that would be 73% based on that, and it's showing 79. Which, I mean, 6% on a 200-yard shot, that's like 15 yards. So that was a 4 iron, even lower VLA. You would assume it would penalize you even more. 192 raw, 115. I'm kind of swinging these 50%. Now we're down to 78%. Which, if that actually added up to whatever we're looking at, I guess it could be ball speed, but the ball speeds are the same. I just need something to base it on. Like, if it's ball speed, then tell us it's ball speed, and then I can maybe figure out an equation there. If not, like 115 from 192, that's substantially more, I would think, than 22%. This is why I wish. Maybe I'll add it after the fact. I'll have to do a ton of editing after the fact, adding all these in. But if you guys are curious on any of these, you can just do the math on your calculator as I'm hitting these, maybe the best way. So when I divide those numbers, 115 divided by 192.4, that's 60%, and it shows 78. 3 wood. And that was less than half. So we had 216 raw and 108. I guess that's almost exactly half. We had 108 game, 216 raw, and it's showing 74%. So that one came out 26% less on speed, which I guess is ball speed, although they match. So they're taking it off. And, I mean, if I do the ball speed of 140.8 times 0.74, that gives us 104.19. So 140 divided by, or 140 minus 104 is 36. If I multiply that by 3, I get 108. So maybe it is. That's almost exactly there. So 3 mile an hour. Well, maybe we're starting to catch on to something. So basically what I did there, I did the 140.8 ball speed, multiplied it by the 74%, and I got like 104, whatever it was. And then I did 140 minus 104, and then I multiplied it by 3 for 3 yards per mile an hour, and that added up to exactly right there, 108. But doing that on the fly seems kind of tough, which brings me back to for like the 10th time. I think it's better off. You're almost better off just forgetting what those percentages say and basing it based on raw versus carry, which is tough with all the dynamic stuff. But let's see if we can get ourselves. Can we get ourselves a significant downslope? Right here should be a pretty significant upslope, which would be better to show. So 16 degrees up. We'll see what this shows. I'll start with the 60 again. We'll see what this shows in terms of penalties. Again, downslope, hitting out of something like this is going to be way more penalizing than an upslope. It's going to launch way up in the air. So 60 degree, it's already launching high. It's going to launch higher because of that upslope. It's showing 81%. And I guess, just for the sake of it, we'll see if those numbers add up once again. So 86 or 48.6 times 0.81 is 39.36. So 48 minus 39 equals 9 times 3 is 27. What's 27? That should be pretty close. 27 plus 27. Well, that's 54. So that doesn't quite add up. Maybe there's a drop off with the ball speed and the yardage with a shot like this. There's probably over a certain threshold. That was the 60 again. We'll go pitch and wedge. I know some of this, you may be watching this and saying, well, we're not really learning anything, but I'm just trying to kind of experiment on the fly and see if I can draw any conclusions. Maybe it may take me watching it a couple times to figure something out, or maybe you're watching this and saying, maybe you're drawing to some conclusions and saying, all right, this adds up a little bit more. So 60 degree out of there, we lost 19%. Pitching wedge. We lost 20%. 114 raw, 85 in the game. If I go now to a 7-iron, again, don't worry about how far these are going. I'm swinging these at like 50%, just trying to kind of hit them and show you the VLA differences. We lost 80 or 79%, so 21% on that. Kind of took me, I was trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to do this because I don't have, like, maybe after the fact, if I draw some conclusions here, I'll be able to do a shorter, more condensed video kind of the findings here. But I was either going to do this live and maybe see if people could find anything, or do it this way. Like, it's either I do this on my own and then try to figure out some stuff which may or may not be true, or just do it like this, kind of raw and uncut, and put everything out, and then you guys can draw your conclusions too if you think of something that I can't. But so that should be, again, we already pretty much figured out that the raw versus game is just not the way to do it, which I think most people are doing that. That's how I was always adding stuff too. But if we do 117.7 divided by 153.4, that's 76%, and it shows 79. So again, relatively close. But if we do our ball speed calculation of 110.3 times 0.79 is 87.13. So if we take 110 minus 87 is 23 times 3 is 69, which still a little bit too much. I guess you could go maybe 2 to 3 miles an hour on ball speed, but 69 adding to the game carry is going to put us over the raw. That was a 7-iron. We'll go 4-iron out of this deep rough with the upslope. I guess we can go right on the other side of this hill after and try the downslope. What do we get on that? 183 versus 138, 79%, so that's 21% based on speed. 3 wood. Lost that a little right, but 214 versus 157, and now we drop down to 25% in the deep rough because of the lower loft. Let's see if we can get ourselves on the other side of this hill and experiment a little bit on some down slopes. That's still up. We'll go back here and see if we can get a better spot. Bear with me. I'm trying to find, all right, 18.9 down. It's going to come out way right, but I'm trying to find a significant downslope. I know we can't really see much with the trees here, but let's see. We're still in the deep rough. We'll start with the 60 again. We'll see what the difference is in any of the percentages based on upslope, downslope. This is going to be the least penalizing with the most amount of loft out of there. That was a 60 degree on an 18.9 downslope. And even that now we're down to 19%, 54 raw versus 46 game. If I go pitching wedge with this downslope, we're going to start working our way down, which I don't think is necessarily groundbreaking. Everyone knows the upslope versus downslope. But for people that are maybe unfamiliar, %, on that one. If we go now 7 iron, lower in VLA, lower in loft, down to 79% or 21% reduction in power. 93 versus 150 raw in game. That was a 4. 79%. The general rule of thumb that I gave you guys at the beginning, those are pretty close to what I've been seeing as a good average. Like I said, 21% out of the deep rough, 20%, somewhere right in there. And that's what we've been around. But again, I'd be scratching my head because I'm saying, all right, that was 181 raw, but we got 90 in the game. That's 50%. Where is that coming from? 3 wood. I topped it. 158 raw for a 3 wood. And 80, so again, like 50%. Wonder if we do our little 3 mile an hour ball speed calculation on that one. So we got 76% on that, so 24% reduction. So if we take 132.3, I think that says, And 132.3 times 0.76 gives us 100.5. So 132 minus 100 is 32 times 3 is 96. Plus 80 brings us up to 176. So the maybe 3 yards per mile an hour isn't quite the best, but it seems to be based on ball speed, and they're not displaying the difference. And it seems to be that one time where we added up, it was perfect with the 3 yards per mile an hour of ball speed. These seem to be a little bit different, so maybe closer to 2. That was a 4 iron again. So 116.4 divided by 0.79, 147. I divided, not multiplied it. 116.4 times 0.79. There we go. 91.9. So we'll call it 92. 116 minus 92 is 24. This time we'll do 2 yards per mile an hour. Gives us 48. Yeah, so this one, it would have been closer to the other one now. So 48 plus 82 brings us up to 130, which is shorter. I don't know. I was hoping by the end of this, I don't know what more I can show you guys. I was hoping by the end of this that I would be able to draw some more definitive conclusions. We haven't done, I don't know if there's any pine straw here. I don't see a cart path. We can do semi-rough. I can at least show you that. We did the bunkers at the beginning. If I bring myself over towards the edge of the fairway, there's no even... Is that semi-rough? There's like very minimal. Some courses have more than others. No, it's just fairway right into the rough. This one have a little bit more maybe. Take my word for it, semi-rough basically takes nothing off. I don't think there's any semi-rough at this course. Maybe around the green. It's just fairway right into rough. Well, no semi-rough here. Yeah, it's still fairway. I don't know. I mean, a little bit at a loss for words. I was hoping there would be more definitive conclusions here. How long have we been going? About 45 minutes. I don't know necessarily. Like I said, apologies. I wanted to hopefully leave this saying, all right, I have it more figured out and I can wrap my head around where these numbers are coming from. Don't know if that's quite the case, but to me, what makes the most sense is I guess the ball speed, even though it doesn't show any difference. The 2 to 3, we've tried multiplying it by 2 yards per mile an hour. We've tried the 3. Sometimes they're close, but even those don't add up, and the raw versus carry definitely doesn't add up. So I'm almost more confused now than when I was before. And I don't know. I get the speed, and the spin percentage has a factor of how much. Obviously, lower spinning is going to carry a bit more versus higher spinning. That's going to factor into the distances, but the whole point of it is I'm scratching my head saying I want to know what I need to play these yardages to, and it doesn't give you any good guidelines of what exactly these calculations are coming from. And definitely doesn't seem raw versus game, and I don't even know if it's ball speed. And if it was ball speed, you think there would be a difference in what the Open API is showing and what it shows up on the data tile, which again, they match exactly the same. So I don't know if maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm overlooking a metric. Again, I turned off the wind and I did the global elevation to try to minimize those variables. It's just tough when you can't necessarily draw a conclusion. If you're in the deep rough over here by the green and you're hitting a 60, obviously that's going to be a big difference of deep rough when you're 250 yards out. So based on the dynamic penalty, based on the loft and the VLA and everything else, you can't really necessarily draw a general rule of thumb for that. The percentages that I went over, I'll do them one more time, but the percentages I went over seem to be pretty close, but other times they're pretty far off, and you're either long by 15, 20 yards or short by 15, 20 yards, which is rather frustrating when you're trying to hit. I get there's no real general guidelines based on lies you have on course, so I get there's some guessing game, but we are on a sim, and we have every single number and metric right in front of us. It would be nice if you could at least pinpoint exactly what's causing what to be able to improve and try to get the most accurate distances you can. But once again, I guess I'll close it out after this, but elevation, 2% per 1,000 feet up or down. Wind, 1% per mile an hour of hurting wind, 0.5%. So you add the 1% per mile an hour of the hurting wind, you subtract 0.5% per 1 mile an hour of helping wind. Semi-rough is going to be 1%, concrete 1%, rough 6%, pine straw 6%, fairway bunker 10%, deep rough 25%, greenside bunker 25%, but based on the raw versus carry, I've been playing that closer to 50%. It hasn't steered me wrong yet, so I don't know. Hopefully you got something out of it. Not sure you did, but I guess I'm going to wrap it up. I guess that's what I had. Kind of an inconclusive test. Didn't really learn a whole lot. Almost more confused now than when I started. But curious to hear what you guys think. Do you guys play your percentages close to that? Are you adding like the 20% for the deep rough? Are you adding that to your raw carry to get your number? Or are you possibly one of those people that do it based on ball speed, which I would have no idea how even to calculate it. 2 to 3 yards per mile an hour. Doesn't even seem like some of those even added up doing it that way. So I don't know. I keep repeating myself, so I'm going to wrap this up. Shout out to the members. Really appreciate the additional support. And like I always say, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.